This is the final revision of my Tarmac setup guide for WRC 8. Let's get into it, as everyone says. Suspension is pretty much the same. I don't know if I've changed anything from the last one. I might have changed the ride height. I can get a little bit more ride height in the front and the rear while still maintaining good camber angles. The main point of this video is the differentials. So based on what these settings say, the torque distribution is normal based on what it says. But the preload, plus is supposed to be open and minus is supposed to be locked, which is true for the preload. However, based on these descriptions here for the percent lock while accelerating, decelerating, and braking, deceleration is actually more like coast, which is like off throttle. Could be high speed or low speed, in between hard acceleration and hard braking, basically. But anyway, the description would say that a high percentage is more open, saying that improves cornering while accelerating, but decreases stability. Maybe you could kind of, if you have a high lock differential, you can get unstable, but I don't know, it's four-wheel drive, it's not that much of an issue in that regard. But it's actually 100%, let's get straight to it. 100 is 100% available lock. I don't know if that's 100% lock, but it's 100% available lock that the game allows. And 0% that's preload. 0% also preload. Anyway, lower number here. Deceleration is a 4. A lower percent is more open. So that's the main takeaway of this video, is that how the differential works is that for preload, 0 is full lock. For percent lock, for acceleration, deceleration, braking, 100% is full lock. So yeah, that's about it. These are my new settings for the differential. The car is so much better to drive now. It's so much more stable, and I have all the differential settings set up for mostly stability. Let's talk about the front differential first. Deceleration, this is actually coasts or low load on the differentials. So it could be while on throttle but having no or little acceleration, so at high speeds, or it could be off throttle and coasting, and which it would actually be. And so it affects high speed stability as well as off throttle stability. Braking is straightforward, it's on the brakes. I have these in the front set to lower settings, so the front drives can have the front wheels can have more varying speeds, while there still is some lock on the differential while in these conditions. And slight changes makes a big difference. Slight changes make big differences in this game. It's actually really good now that I've figured it out. The car is so much more stable. These damper settings, they could be stiffer, but whatever. And the car is much more stable now that I figured out the differentials. So moving on from the front differential, going on to the center differential, full preload. Everything is full preload. Front differential, full preload. Center differential, full preload. And if you know anything from Richard Burns Rally, you know that basically lock the center differential. You want both front and rear wheels going the same speeds. You don't want them varying very much, except for in this scenario in the brakes, because of the brake bias. The brake bias, well, actually it wouldn't matter if it's a brake bias or not. You want to have varying speeds on the brakes so that you can either lock the front or lock the rear depending on your brake bias, and you don't want them spinning together. So I've set this to 90, and I've noticed that setting the front braking and deceleration to 0, it's slightly too unstable, even at 100%, or what am I trying to say? Even in more stable situations. So I've left this at 4. Could go up 6 or down to 2. They go in increments of 2. 90 is good for keeping the rear end nice and locked on the brakes, because it's more locked now that I've figured out. it's the center differential is more locked at 100%, so it's more locked at 90% than it was at 56 or 44% it was at before. This allows a little bit more rotation. If you want more rotation on the brakes, you could either change the brake bias, which I don't recommend because it seems a bit too much, or you can increase the center braking lock that way. The rear differential, rear preload is full available lock on the preload, which is at 0. Acceleration, I want as much lock as possible. This keeps the stability of the car. And there's no wheel hop simulated in this game, or in most simulators anyway. So you can get away with full lock differentials in the simulators. Deceleration, I've opened it up to 72. This allows for the high-speed maneuverability. I have it set to more stable. If you're having trouble with understeer at high speeds, you can change these lock settings in the rear. And also, I'll get to the aerodynamics later, but I have the aerodynamics for more stability. Braking, full lock, because I can get enough rotation out of the car without opening up the rear differential on the brakes. And this improves traction over bumps because when the wheel is in the air, it has no traction, and if you're on the brakes and there's no traction on the tire, that tire is going to stop spinning. But if it has more lock on the differential, it's going to keep spinning even if it's in the air, so it doesn't cause unexpected loading on the tires that may cause the car to spin. Brake bias, same, 70%. It's not that far forward for this kind of car. 65 might work. I haven't tried it yet with the differential settings. Gearing, I haven't changed since the last video, I don't think. Alright, and then the aerodynamics. Aerodynamics I've adjusted so that it's stable at high speed. I've noticed that the tire physics are still, while the car is much more easier to drive now with the differential settings, the tire physics still don't, what do you call it? They don't, they punish high angle slides. So if you get into high angles, the car becomes hard to recover. And so I have this, these aerodynamic settings so that I reduce the chances of getting to high angle slides at high speeds. Alright, and that's pretty much that. Let's do a test drive. Hopefully I do a clean one. But
20 flat left and
here we
flat
go.
right, keep in. Left 6, tightens, keep in, 80. Caution, square right, small cut and flat right, 150. Left 5, 200. Caution, brake right 3 into left 2 at junction 30.
I'm much more confidence
Left 5
going
short
faster
to
in
the
this car now.
Into brake, right 5. Keep in over crest into hairpin left. Don't cut, 100. Left 4 short, 50. Left 4 short.
This section
Left 3,
must be
keep in into
memorized
right 4 short.
for me because none of these corners work out properly. It says this is a right 4. This is definitely not a 4.
Into right 4, tightens, hairpin right wide.
None of these are
30.
4s.
Flat left, keep into right 4 and left 6 short. Hard brake for hairpin left, don't cut, 30. Right 4, 30. Hairpin right, cut, flat left long, tightens and open.
So the hairpins, I could pull the handbrake, but I just choose not to on those wider
Into
hairpins.
caution, right 4 short,
Try and
narrows
go
at junction
faster
into
here.
flat left,
Oh,
100.
it's
Flat
understeering.
right into flat left, 100. Hard brake for square right over crest, 300.
The car is much more stable with the tires in the dirt because the differentials are locked finally.
Right right 4, short, don't cut into left 5, short, don't cut, 150, caution, hard brake, square left, narrows, 150. Left 6 into right 6, over crest, into left 6, long. And right 6, keep in. Flat
I want
left
to keep off
into
that
right
grassy
5,
section there,
tightens
the
over
big
crest
bump.
and open.
I can actually go full throttle through
Left
that
6 short,
previous
cut into
section
right
and
4,
through here.
over crest, into right
Because the
4,
car's actually
tightens
stable.
3 and hairpin left at junction, 30. Left 4, tightens into right 3, cut.
The car doesn't snap around those handbrake turns because the
Into left 4
differentials
long,
keep it
tightens,
stable
don't
again.
cut. And right 4 into left 4,
None of these are
widens
fours.
the junction. And flat left, 50. Right 6 short into left 6 short, 30. Right 5, 30. Caution, brake for square right, don't cut, 150. Left 5 brake into right 4, don't cut, flat right, keep in, 30.
This might actually be a 4. I took it
Square
bad.
left open.
This is a tight square.
And right 4, 80.
Oops, shift it up
Square
in there.
right at junction, 30. Right 5, cut.
Oh, second gear.
And left 6, short, small cut. Right 5, tightens, and left 6, tightens, cut, 50.
Go slow through here.
Flat right, 50. Caution, square right, big cut, 80.
With the way my pedals and wheel are kind of
Right
messed
4,
up,
don't cut, and left 5, 30.
my throttle pedal is basically just a
Hard
button.
brake for heavy
It's either
left,
0
30.
throttle or full throttle. There's some slight modulability, what am I trying to say there?
Into left 3, long.
There's some
Keep
slight
in.
travel in the throttle pedal, but it's
And right
mostly
4
just
short,
on or off.
widens at junction for finish.
Anyway, and that's a run. Much more confident in the car. AI is such easy. I changed it. I was testing out the competitivity to see how I'm going to do a career, because the realistic is, or authentic is really, really hard to start a career from scratch. So I'm trying to see if what difficulty settings I want to start my career on for the first run through while I memorize the stages. But anyway, I'm really happy with this game now that I figured out the differentials. The cars feel good to drive. I'm still working on the off-road settings, or gravel settings, and I'll get to that in a later video. And that concludes this video. Till the next one.